Webster defines crunch time as a critical moment or period, like the end of a game, when decisive action is needed. Every sports fan knows this time in the game. Your palms sweat just a little more, your heart races just a little bit faster, and you live and die with every play until the final seconds tick off the clock and you're either celebrating a victory or disappointed by the defeat. The team at Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network understands just how critical these moments are. For us, it begins as soon as the next set of games are on the board. We evaluate the opening lines and any breaking news throughout the week. We cover each game inside and out, whether it's from inside the locker room to a huddle down on the field, the court, or the ice. We take you inside the meeting room with scouts, coaches, and executives. We have our fingers on the pulse of all the sports that we cover: the National Hockey League, NBA, college basketball, college football, and the National Football League. We are the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network, and we're here to help you find your sports advantage. After all the data has been crunched, we then turn it over to Kenneth for the best analysis around. His unique perspective in both understanding the data and how it applies to the game and how you win is the Crunch Time Sports Advantage. Are you ready? The Crunch Time Jet is fueled and ready for takeoff, and the Crunch Time Express is about to leave the station. Your VIP pass has been approved, so all aboard.
This is it. The countdown is over. The off-season noise? It's time to cut through it. Welcome to the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network, where numbers don't lie and legends are built one Saturday at a time. Today, we drop our 2025 preseason top 25, not based on hype, not on headlines, but on real data, real edges, and cold-blooded football analytics. Which teams are ready to dominate? Who's about to disappoint? And which under-the-radar squad could break the system and crash the CFP? If you're looking for a safe list, this ain't it. We're talking power ratings, transfer portal takeovers, coach upgrades, schedule landmines, and the kind of insider intel that separates the pros from the public. Get your notebooks ready. Your futures bets dialed in. Because this top 25 hits different. Let's go. The Crunch Time 2025 preseason top 25 starts right now. Now let me welcome in the founder of our company and our senior analyst, Kenneth, to unveil the top 25 and the criteria for the list.
And welcome in back to the 2025 college football season, folks. We are now here. All the pre-hype is now coming to an end. It's time to get down to business, and nobody, and I mean nobody in the business, does it better than the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network. Hey, I got you about for the next hour or so. So let's get right into the top 25. And Tina did a great job of the intro talking about our criteria for the top 25. So let's go ahead and flip over to that right now, because as you mentioned, we're not about recycling some of the hype and false narratives that you're going to find in other places. So let me lay out what our criteria was for each of the teams that were in this top 25 that's going to be released. And again, this is the preseason top 25. This is not an indication of who we think is going to win the national championship. We do that during the season, but this is just how we see you going into week one of the college football season. So the first criteria, it always starts with the head coach. Do you have a quality and competent head coach really kind of leading your team as we enter this new phase of college football? And when I say new phase of college football, folks, I'm not talking about the transfer portal. What I'm talking about is the expansion of the college football playoffs. These teams are now having to play more games throughout the year in order to win a national title. So you're talking about playing 12 regular season games in a span of 14 weeks. That's significant. So can your head coach kind of navigate those landmines from a scheduling standpoint? The next thing we're looking at is your head coach and your coaching staff built to make adjustments both in game and during the week of preparation, because if you're not able to put together a quality game plan, and certainly if you're not able to make those in-game adjustments, really going to be hard for me to envision your team as a championship threat. The next thing that I'm looking at will be your line of scrimmage. First and foremost, coming from the NFL world, everything revolves around your offense and defensive line. If you have any aspirations of winning a national title, it starts with how good your offensive line and how good your defensive line. Don't believe me? Go look at the last two national champions from college football. You'll see just that. Michigan had maybe the most veteran offensive line that we will ever likely see again, thanks to the added year, the COVID year, and now those kids that would have already been in the NFL were 6th and sometimes 7th-year seniors. So those guys played a lot of snaps together. Same with their defensive line. That Michigan defensive line was absolutely loaded. Go back and look at the Buckeyes offensive line from last year. Two of their starting offensive linemen are projected starters in the NFL this coming year. And then Seth McLaughlin, who, despite that horrific lower leg injury, was a phenomenal pickup for the Buckeyes. Their defensive line, veteran-laden defensive line with JTT, Tariq, and, of course, Captain Jack Sawyer. So you're talking about being able to dominate the offense and defensive line. Next component we're going to look at is your schedule. How does your schedule lay out? We knew your opponents, but now we got a chance to really kind of see how that schedule lays out. Is it front loaded with a lot of difficult teams at the front of the schedule? Is it kind of back loaded where most of your difficult games are in the later half of the season? Is it sprinkled throughout the schedule, or do you just happen to have one of the weaker schedules in college football? That's all going to be taken into account in some of these rankings. And then we look at projected top 100 picks, not just for the 2026 draft, but the 2027 draft. So in your two deep, do you have guys that we project to go in the first, second, and third round, whether it's in the 2026 NFL draft or the 2027 NFL draft? The more guys that you have in that top 100 or projected guys that you could have in the top 100, the more likely you're going to be able to go deep into the season because you have better talent and better depth than your opponent. And then finally, do you have game changers? Once again, coming from that NFL world, we're looking at guys who are going to project to have first round grades, not just be drafted in the first round. So we know besides the 1 year where the Patriots got dinged for a first round pick, you're going to have 32 picks in the first round every year, but you're not going to have guys who are graded with first round picks. So typically the way that I was trained in this by the legendary Gil Brandt, rest in peace, Gil, who helped architect some of those great Cowboy teams in the 60s, 70s, and into the early 80s. Typically you're going to have about 12 to about 20 guys who have true first round grades. That's what I'm looking for. Do you have those kind of game changers on your roster? If not, once again, hard to project you as a team that's going to really be in it once we get late into the season in November and certainly into December and on to January. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get this thing cranking and let's get it rolling. And coming in at number 25, we're going to go to the Big 12, and that will be the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Folks, this team has done a lot of upgrades as far as into the transfer portal, and they really focused right where I was talking about on the offensive and defensive line of scrimmage there. When we look at our projections for this team, we project their offensive line to potentially be a top 20 offensive line unit during the season coming up. And this was a unit that did a really good job of protecting the quarterback last year. So we expect that offensive line in the Big 12 to absolutely be a potential game changer there. And as far as the resources that they invested on the defensive line, folks, we project this as a top 15 defensive line. And some early projections that we're running, this could be a top 10 defensive line unit led by Stanford transfer David Bailey. Young man can absolutely put pressure on the quarterback in a conference where you see the ball put up in the air quite a bit. That is something that could absolutely help the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Quick note on them before we move on to team number 24 is quarterback Moulton needs to cut down on the INTs if this team has any chance of making it to Arlington and playing for the Big 12 championship game. Way too many turnovers from that quarterback last year. Now, moving on to team number 24. And we'll head down to the Southeastern Conference, and that's where we find the Tennessee Volunteers. And folks, this team coming off a playoff appearance last year. We know what happened when they went to Columbus last year. Got it handed to them pretty badly. But going into this season, losing their star cornerback in Jamon McCoy is definitely going to impact this defense going into the 2025 season. And I fully expect that this kid will never step back on the field and wear a Tennessee jersey in-game competition. This kid is projected to be a first-round pick in next year's draft, and it would be unwise for him to risk his NFL future despite tearing his knee in January. That's just too quick of a turnaround, and to suffer another injury to that knee in the span of 18 months would all but basically end any NFL hopes that he has. So I do not expect Jamon McCoy to ever play for the Tennessee Volunteers again, and they are absolutely going to miss his absolute playmaking ability at the cornerback position. Now, without McCoy, they still returned 6 starters on last year's defense, and they're going to need a big performance by defensive end Dominic Bailey as he will look to replace another first-round pick there for the Volunteers. And we'll see if Tennessee can kind of start to put things together. I'm going to give you another name to watch on top of that, and that is junior linebacker Aaron Carter. He is going to have to be that signal caller in the middle of that defense and really kind of step up and help the Vols continue to have one of the better defenses in the Southeastern Conference. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, a lot of changes as well. Nico out. He's now at UCLA. In former quarterback from Charlotte, Joey Aguilar, a major step up in competition, and he is going to have his work cut out in front of him. Running back Deshaun Bishop will try to fill the big shoes left by Dylan Sampson, who is now with the Cleveland Browns as he was taken in the 4th round, and a wide receiving court that has not been review in spring practice. So we'll see if this group led by Chris Brazil II can really kind of get things going there. As far as where we project this Tennessee offense in the 4 major position groups, we're not high on the quarterback room. As far as the running back room, it looks like we have Tennessee projected outside of the top 40 at the running back position because of Sampson not being there. And as far as the wide receiving room, we project them right now going into the season outside of the top 30. Now, taking a quick look at their defensive unit, we expect this defensive unit, especially the defensive line for Tennessee, to be a top 40 defensive line unit because of the hockey shifts that they come at you with that defense, and they'll need to do that once again this year. As far as their linebacker core, we have this projected as a top 20 linebacker room. And as far as the secondary, took a major hit there with McCoy being out. We've actually slid them to where we still project them inside of the top 25, but had McCoy been there, you're now talking about a unit that would have probably been in the top 12, if not even higher. So we'll see if Tennessee can absolutely get it going there with Tim Banks on the defensive side of the ball. And because he's got some time to kind of work out those different position changes, maybe Tennessee can find their way back into the college football playoffs. We're going to stay right there in the Southeastern Conference as coming in at number 23, Mama Deb, Janet, Jen, ladies, always glad that you're able to join us. Boomer Sooner comes in at number 23 for us in the preseason. Folks, we're not going to bury the lead here. This is a big year for head coach Brent Venables. He made a mistake with the offensive coordinator hire last year. He rectifies that by going to Washington State and hiring Ben Arbuckle. Ben Arbuckle is going to bring with him his quarterback in John Mateer. Now, this will be Mateer's third year in the system, so from that standpoint, should be a smooth transition. And he's going to have some help in that backfield as they go to the University of California and bring over Jaden Ott, giving them a pretty good combination there in the backfield with a dual threat quarterback and a running back. If he's fully healthy, could absolutely go over 1,000 yards rushing this year. And they would need to upgrade this rushing attack because the Sooners 76th in the nation in running the ball. And folks, that is not Oklahoma football. As far as the defense goes, Brent Venables may not know how to coach or hire coaches on the offensive side of the ball, but this guy is a true OG at the defensive spot there. This defensive line, let's start with that unit. We project this as a top 5 defensive unit in college football this season. As far as their linebackers go, we still are trying to figure out the full rotation there, but Kip Lewis is going to head up this linebacker room, replacing Danny Sutzman and, of course, Billy Bowman out of the secondary. We still project this as a top 10 linebacker unit. And then as far as their secondary, here may be the only place where we have some concerns on that defense. Still project them as a top 25 secondary. So once again, high hopes for this Oklahoma Sooner defense. We'll see if the offense can absolutely contribute. And if so, we expect the Sooners to have a much better record. But if that offense struggles, once again, we may have to have a different conversation about one head coach in Brent Venables. Checking in at number 22 is the Kansas State Wildcats, and head coach Chris Kleiman has done a fantastic job there at the Little Apple in Kansas with Kansas State. Looks like 48-28 winning record there. Coach has been solid. This is the second year for offensive coordinator Matt Wells, who took over for former Kansas State legend in Colin Klein, who's now with the Aggies in Texas A&M. Avery Johnson, big time recruit there for the Wildcats, had a up and down year. And when I say up and down year, it's because of we know what he gives you as a dual threat. Over 600 yards running with 7 touchdowns, threw for 25 touchdowns. But here's the rub. 10 INTs. So when we look at that passing touchdown to INT ratio, 2.5 to 1 ratio, not good enough. If you want to be an elite quarterback, especially at the collegiate level, kind of want to see that 3 to 1 or even closer to 4 to 1 there. So let's cut down on the turnovers a little bit and really make sure that we keep this offense in rhythm there. When we look at K-State and Coach Kleiman, where is it all going to start for them? Because they're replacing running back in DJ Giddens. All DJ did was rush for over 1,300 yards last season. So that's a lot of production gone for the Wildcats. We're projecting this running game for K-State to be probably around a top 30 running game there. And as far as their offensive line, because you're not going to have a great offense, you're not going to have a great rushing attack without a great offensive line. And as I look here and scan the board, there's some question marks about this Kansas State offensive line. We're projecting this offensive line to be a top 50 unit. So they're going to need to be certainly better than that if they have any desire of getting back to the Big 12 championship game. As far as the defense goes, let's just take a quick look at how this defensive unit is setting up. And as I like to mention, we start with the defensive line. This defensive line should probably be about a top 30 unit. And then when we stretch that out to the front seven, when we include the linebackers, we think the linebackers could be the strength of this team as we're projecting them to be a top 25 unit in college football. So you got a good defensive line. You got some good linebacker play. That's a recipe for having a really good team going into the start of the 2025 season. And then coming in at number 21, we're going to head up to the Big Ten. And we're going to welcome in head coach Brett Bielema and the Illinois Fighting Illini. And folks, there's a lot to like about Coach B and the way that he puts together a offensive unit. I think that Brett Bielema is truly a throwback to the old Big Ten head coaches. When you think of a Hayden Fry, when you think of a Woody Hayes, when you think of a Bo, when you think of a Barry Alvarez, his predecessor when he was at Wisconsin, physical offensive line play. That is something that Brett Bielema stands on, and that is something that we fully expect from this team going into the 2025 season. Quarterback Luke Altmaier turned down opportunities to hit the transfer portal, like what he had there at Illinois, and he's got a really solid running back room in Lautry and Fagan, and that's aided by all 5 starters back on the offensive line there for the Fighting Illini. You want to talk about a recipe for success, Brett Bielema getting all 5 of those starters back. Expect that this unit could propel themselves into the upper echelon as far as offensive line play. And where we have this offensive line unit projected right now going into the preseason, we have them as a top 20 offensive line there. Now, the big question on the offensive side of the ball is who's going to step up in the wide receiving room? Both Pat Bryant and Zachariah Franklin are off to the NFL. Now, let's flip it over to the defense. And where this team starts on the defensive line, we have them projected as a top 25 defensive line unit. So solid offensive line play, solid defensive line play. If you want to know why some people are starting to look at Illinois to potentially do some things, that's where it starts and ends for me. And if you just take a quick look at the first 3 games on their schedule, Western Illinois at home, they travel down to Durham to take on the Blue Devils, and then they're back home to play Western Michigan before getting into the heart of conference play when they head to Bloomington to take on America's team, the Indiana Hoosiers. So getting off to a fast start and just kind of really working through the kinks of that wide receiver room will absolutely be critical there for Coach B in the Illinois Fighting Illini. And rounding out the top 20 will be the Iowa Hawkeyes. We're going to stay right there in the Big Ten. Iowa, once again, led by head coach Kurt Ferentz, the dean of college football coaches. I believe this is year 27 for the head coach there. Let me see if I got. No, I'm sorry. I'm shorting him a couple of years. Just completed year 29 as a head coach. 20. That's right. 20. Yeah, it is 27. Year 27 for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Tim Lester in year 2 as the offensive coordinator. One of the best defensive coordinators in all of college football, and Phil Parker back once again. I need to start to hear Phil Parker's name mentioned for some head coaching jobs, whether it's at the G6 level or what have you. But Phil Parker's too good of a daggum defensive-minded coach not to be getting some shots at the head coaching job and working his way up. Once again, Kurt Ferentz knows his offensive line play, brings back, it looks like, three starters on that offensive line. That group is anchored by Logan Jones, the center there. This guy could be a potential first team Big Ten performer there on the offensive line. As far as what we can expect from Iowa, you can expect solid offensive line play and expect some tight end that we've never heard of to put up some significant numbers there. Now, a new quarterback will be taking over. Mark Gronkowski will be the new quarterback there as Iowa dips into the transfer portal from the FCS level, where he led South Dakota State to back-to-back national champions there at the FCS level. Will be replacing running back Caleb Johnson, who's off to the NFL. So the leg work on the ground game will fall on the shoulders and legs of running back Kamari Moulton. The sophomore didn't get a lot of production last year because they featured Johnson, and rightfully so. So we expect to see this young man really kind of take over there. Now, as far as what Phil Parker is working with on the defensive side of the ball, and while we have them ranked in the top 25 is because of that defensive line. We project this as a top 10 defensive unit there in college football this year going into the preseason. The linebackers, just scanning my notes really quickly to see where we have the linebacker room ranked, and it looks like we have them as a top 50 linebacker room. And then as far as their secondary goes, we project the Iowa Hawkeyes to be also in the top 25. So if there's a quote unquote weakness, it will be the linebacker play there. But that's where Phil Parker really stands out as a defensive coordinator. It's not working with elite talent, but what he's working with is quality personnel. Will coach them up and absolutely have them ready to go. Now, let's jump inside of the top 20, and we'll start at number 19. We head back to the Southeastern Conference, and that's where we find the Florida Gators. Billy Napier got a stay of execution last year, going 8-5 last year, and the hope for the Gator faithful is that quarterback DJ Lagway can take that next step in his quarterback evolution. Well, we've seen this recipe before with the Florida Gators. If you go back to when Urban Meyer first took over, he had two really good offensive linemen, the Pouncey twins. They're really kind of guiding that offense. This year, the Florida Gators will be led by the best center in all of college football in one Jack Slaughter. This young man projects to be a first-round pick at the center spot. That's how good he is. Has earned first-team All-American honors, and with just pure power and great technique, would be there to anchor that offensive line and take some of the line call responsibilities off of DJ Lagway for this season, as he'll make all of the blitz pickup calls there for the Gators. Now, the guy that really needs to step up for this offense to really kind of take that next step is not just DJ Lagway, it's running back Jaden Ball. And he really needs to become one of the next really good Gator running backs. Last year, 133 carries, 673 yards on the ground. Need him to be more around that 900 or 1,000-yard mark for this Gator offense to really hit its true potential. At the wide receiver spot, Eugene Wilson III has to become that deep vertical stretch wide receiver for the Gators if they really want to take advantage of DJ Lagway's arm talent there as far as throwing the deep ball. For Lagway, got to cut down on the interceptions. In very limited action last year, 12 touchdowns, 9 INTs. That is certainly not going to be good enough. Got to take that next step forward there for the young quarterback. On the defensive side of the ball, this defense is anchored by one of the best defensive ends in all of America, and that is Tyreek Sapp. I close my eyes and I see a future top 10 pick in the NFL draft, along with defensive tackle Caleb Banks anchoring that defensive line. The Gators are expected to be one of the best defensive front sevens in all of college football. Just to kind of give you an idea where we have this defensive line projected, we have them projected as a top 10 unit. And I would expect the linebacker room would not be that far off as we project them as a top 25 unit. So that Florida front seven is going to give some havoc there for some opponents. They have a soft landing to start the schedule with Long Island University in South Florida, but the next 4 games on their schedule are, oh my God, difficult. At LSU, at Miami. They welcome in the Longhorns to the Swamp, and then on the road in College Station with the Aggies. So expect this to be a really make or break first part of the schedule there for the Florida Gators. If they can navigate that stretch, the Gators could be in line to do some better things this year. But tough start to the schedule with 4 difficult opponents in back-to-back weeks. Coming up at number 18, we head back to the Big 12, and that's where we find the Iowa State Cyclones. And Matt Campbell, been a little bit up and down there as the head coach there in Ames. Record of 64-51 in his 9 years there. We know Rocco Beck, solid quarterback, threw for over 3,500 yards last season, 25 touchdowns, 9 INTs. Want to see him cut down on the INTs. This receiving unit will be without both Noel and Higgins, as both of those young men were drafted by the Houston Texans in the most recent NFL draft. So who's going to really step up and really kind of take over as wide receiver 1? I'm looking at Chase Sowell, really going to have to step up and help out the quarterback unit. Another name that I've kind of gotten some nice early reviews on, and that is Xavier Townsend, high school enrollee, has a long-standing relationship with the quarterback there. So we'll see if these two can kind of get connected there at the quarterback and wide receiver position. As far as the defense loses a lot of players off of it. Just 4 returning starters there for the Cyclones, and they will have to hit the ground running as they will open up conference play in week 0 in Dublin, Ireland versus the Kansas State Wildcats. So the loser of that game could find themselves behind the 8 ball very early on in conference play. And we know how crazy the Big 12 was last year. Going to give you a player to watch on the defensive side of the ball. And it's going to have to be Dominique Orange, 6'4", 325 defensive tackle. He's going to have to do some yeoman-like work there to make sure that he's able to push that pocket, and opposing quarterbacks just can't step up into the pocket and really have a clean pocket to throw from. So expect that big fella to absolutely make a name for himself if the Cyclones are going to find their way back towards the Big 12 title championship race there. Expect another wacky year in that conference. Coming in at number 17, we go back to the Southeastern Conference. And folks, we head to Columbia, South Carolina. Shane Beamer, speaking of another coach that earned a stay of execution, came up just a little bit short of making the college football playoffs last year. Lenore Sellers, an untested redshirt freshman a year ago, suddenly has shown up in Heisman watch list and even is being whispered as a early round pick in some early mock drafts. Now, we know about early mock drafts. We don't put a whole lot of stock in those things, but what this kid does have is a big arm, throws a beautiful deep ball, and is also powerful yet elusive as a runner. Now, here's what I got to see from Lenore Sellers. The touchdown to INT ratio has got to get better. The underneath completion percentage has got to get better. You're talking about a quarterback, 18 touchdowns, 7 INTs. Not good enough for me as an evaluator. So I want to see him start to take the next step as a quarterback. Want to see that passing touchdown number get north of 25. Want to see that interception number go down to about 5 during the regular season. Now, his big-time threat at the wide receiver is Nick Harbor. Folks, when I say that this kid is a true burner, that is an understatement. This kid was turned down an invitational to join the U.S. national team in both the 100 meters and 200 meters. Folks, you want to hear about world-class speed, and that term gets thrown around way too loosely. This kid was good enough by the U.S. Olympic Committee to think that he could absolutely run with guys like Noah Lyles and bring home gold in the 100 and 200 meters. Just a quick nugget for you folks. There's only been one football player in NFL history to win the 100 meters in the Olympics and go on and play in the NFL. That gentleman's name, the legendary and late Bullet Bob Hayes. So that's the kind of speed that Neighbors has. Now, he's not a good route runner, and that's being kind. But because he hasn't focused on the position long enough, you can understand why. So he needs to just improve enough as a route runner. I'm not going to ask him to run the entire route tree with precision, but what I need him to be able to run is those deep in cuts, those deep outbreaking routes with precision to really kind of threaten the defense to where he can snap that route off and not just be a vertical stretch guy. On the defensive side of the ball, folks, Dylan Stewart is one of the best defensive ends in all of college football. I'll take it one step further. He's the best defensive line player that the University of South Carolina has had since Jadeveon Clowney went first overall a little over a decade and a half ago. That's where we're projecting this true sophomore. And remember, I mentioned top 100 players. He's not eligible for this draft. He'll be eligible for the 2027 draft, but he's still that quality of a talent. Now, like I said, lost a lot of production off of that defense. Only returned 4 starters on defense, just 5 starters on offense. This team is going to have to hit the ground early because that game against the Virginia Tech Hokies in the Dome in Atlanta will absolutely be important for the Gamecocks to get off to a fast start. Now, another quick note. Transfer running back Rasul Faison has not been academically cleared yet. So if he is not cleared here relatively soon, will not be available for the Gamecocks, and that would be a significant loss. So stay tuned with that information. Now, let's head over to the Atlantic Coast Conference as we're going to go to the Metroplex, and that's where we find the Southern Methodist University Mustangs. Ride that pony, baby. Ride that pony. Rhett Lashley, one of the best head coaches and offensive play callers in all of college football. And now he gets a full year to work with his quarterback in Kevin Jennings. Took over for Preston Stone very early on in the campaign last year. 23 touchdowns, 11 INTs. Got to get those INTs down. Got to get those touchdowns up just a little bit. Now, they're going to be without their running back, Smith, who is now in the NFL. So where does this team kind of look to get some additional production? Well, they get back off of injury, R.J. Maryland. And boy, you want to talk about making me feel old. I remember watching his dad, Russell Maryland, at the University of Miami. And of course, they're with the Cowboys there in the early 1990s. R.J. Maryland went down with a knee injury that he suffered on a direct hit in the game against Stanford in mid-October. From all reports, he's getting closer to being 100%, so he's going to be a full go. If he is, he unlocks this offense by quite a bit because now your number one target is lined up in the middle of the field, and that should be some very easy reads there for Kevin Jennings to have that guy back. Now, as far as the defense goes, only 2 starters back on defense, and Deuce Harmon, their number 1 corner, at 5'10", 190 pounds, will absolutely have to play like a future top 100 pick if the SMU defense is going to continue to be one of the better units that we saw last year. Now, full disclosure, the pass defense was one of the liabilities on this team last year, giving up 226 yards per game passing. That was 79th in the nation last year. Got to improve on that. Now, we're going to stay right there in the Atlantic Coast Conference because coming up at number 15 is the Louisville Cardinal. And Louisville head coach Jeff Brom back at his alma mater, where he just completed his second year, 19-8 there, and I want to say 85-52 in his 11 years as a head coach. Now, quarterback Tyler Shaw off to the NFL with the New Orleans Saints there. So in comes transfer quarterback Miller Moss to run this offense for head coach Brom and his brother Brian Brom, who's the offensive coordinator. Now, where's this team going to have to make some improvements? It's going to be mostly on the defensive side of the ball because the offense was absolutely cooking with grease last year. Defense, not so much. You're talking about a defense that scoring-wise was 56th last year, 40th against the run, but 100 against the pass, 64th overall there when we rank their defense. So who has got to step up on this defense? And like I said, it all starts up front. So those defensive tackles got to start to push those pockets. And then guys like Carter and Green on the defensive end has got to close down the gap and get that ball out quicker because their starters are back on the front seven, but this is an entirely new secondary as they will start both brand new corners and 2 new safeties. So this team has absolutely got to get rolling now. That first game against Eastern Kentucky needs to be a win there because in week number 2, the Dukes from James Madison will be coming to Louisville, and that is a team to not take lightly there. So a lot of work for the Cardinal to do. And if we look at where we project that defensive line for Louisville, because that's an area that's got to be improved, we got them projected 40th right now. So we'll see if that holds up during the regular season for the Louisville Cardinal. Coming up at number 14 is the Sun Devils of Arizona State. And I want to say a quick hello to my good friend Tina, big Sun Devil fan there, and always want to say thank you for your support, Tina. And we know about your NFL team. Maybe some good things on the horizon for that team as well. Kenny Dillingham, fantastic first 2 years there. Now the record may not show it. Had a rough first year, but followed that up with a big time double-digit win their last season, getting to the college football playoffs. Now back for this team is quarterback Sam Levitt as a true sophomore. Levitt, 24 touchdowns, 6 INTs, over 2,800 yards passing. So good job there. Do not have Cam Scatterboo back, and you're talking about well over 2,300 yards of total offense and 24 total touchdowns. Dynamic runner, dynamic passer, but they do get back one of the best wide receivers that nobody is going to be talking about in Jordan Tyson. Now, we know Tyson missed the Big 12 title game and the playoff game with I think it was a collarbone injury, but he is back, and he is back healthy and 100%. Expect him to put up big-time numbers there in the Big 12. And it's going to start because of that offensive line. 4 out of 5 starters back on the offensive line. And when you're looking at a unit like the Arizona State Sun Devils, we have them projected as a top 30 offensive line. So that is something to absolutely build on for Coach Kenny Dillingham. The defense, also veteran laden with 9 returning starters there, including all of the secondary. Folks, a name that I'm going to be keeping an eye on this defense is safety Xavion Alford, 6 foot, 200-pound senior. Can both play the center field position on the defense and also bring it down in the box in some run support as well. So really like this young man a lot. Going to give you one more player to keep an eye on for this unit, and that is offensive lineman Ben Coleman, 6'3", 330-pound senior. He's going to have to anchor that offensive line that I talked about with 4 out of 5 starters back. You love having that veteran offensive line at the center spot to kind of take some of the pressure off of that young quarterback and to not have to worry about setting the protections there. So we're going to see where this team gets off and running at, and open the season up with Northern Illinois and then heading to start Vegas to take on the Mississippi State Bulldogs there in week number 2. Let's head back to the Southeastern Conference, and this time it's a little hotty-toddy for you. And folks, let's go ahead and put this out there. The Rebels will once again have a potent offense because that's what you're going to get from a Lane Kiffin coach offense. I want to say a quick hello to all of our Ole Miss fans here. A little hotty-toddy for you. Austin Simmons takes over for Jackson Dart, who was a first-round pick with the New York Football Giants in the most recent NFL draft. But Simmons is not going to have to carry the burden all alone on the offense. As I mentioned, a deep wide receiving core. May not have the top end names, but expect Caden Lee to be their number 1 wide receiver out of the slot. 5'11", 175 pounds. Going to do a lot of damage there in the slot. Along with Stribling, who's going to be primarily on the outside playing what I call that A.J. Brown, Trey Harris role, 6'2", 200-pound senior there. Expect him to get a lot of work, and maybe the best set of tight ends in all of college football, led by Daquan Wright, 6'4", 255-pound senior there. Now, this team is breaking in a completely new offensive line. The only starter back is Diego Pounds at the left tackle spot. So 4 new starters on the offensive line. That could be a little bit problematic. But once again, like I said, Lane Kiffin is going to know how to scheme up an offense as good as anybody in America. Where we have this offensive line for the Ole Miss Rebels projected right now, we have them slightly outside of the top 50. So going to need them to get some cohesion, and they could have some potential landing spots there, opening with Georgia State and then heading up to the SEC opener, where they hope to get some revenge there against the Kentucky Wildcats before facing the Arkansas Razorbacks. Now, the defensive side of the ball, Pete Golding, former defensive coordinator under Nick Saban, has done a tremendous job there in Oxford, Mississippi, doing a yeoman-like work there. Had one of the best defensive units that this program has had in decades there. Now, only liability was this team struggled against the pass last year, 86th against the pass, but against the run, absolutely elite. Now, this team is replacing 9 starters off of that defense. Perkins is truly the notable name back. 6'1", 210-pound junior is going to have to be all over the place, not only in coverage, but also as a blitzer as well for this unit. So expect him to do a lot of work there for the Ole Miss Rebels defense, because they're replacing the entire front 4 off of that really good unit. Want to say all 4 of those guys were top 100 picks. And then, of course, losing Trey Amos at the cornerback position, along with Chris Paul at the linebacker spot. So Perkins is going to have to not only be the heart and soul of this defense, but he's going to have to be all over the field, making big-time plays every single week for this Rebel defense. Checking in at number 12, we head back to the Atlantic Coast Conference. And Tommy, good friend of the show here. Your Canes will check in at the number 12 spot. And the reason why we have them at the number 12 spot is because you're losing not only a dynamic player at the quarterback position, but one of the best leaders that the Hurricanes have had at the quarterback spot, probably since one Kenny Dorsey was there roaming the sidelines as the Canes quarterback. Cam Ward, record-breaking year last year, 4,300 yards, 39 touchdowns, 7 INTs, and was just the alpha dog as far as getting this offense and this team really to follow his leadership. Now, can the Canes replicate that once again going into the transfer portal like they did? We'll find out, because Carson Beck will be the starting quarterback, and he's coming off of two things that were concerning for us initially. One, the elbow surgery. Just really started to kind of get throwing. We'll see if that arm is going to be ready. And from a physical standpoint, if not, may have to turn to sophomore Emory Williams there to play the quarterback position. Now, as far as the offensive line for the Hurricanes, and folks, I cannot emphasize this enough. The Miami Hurricanes project to have a top 10 offensive line, and that's led by the big dog in Francis Moaga. Guys, look, I'm not putting him in the same class with Penei Sewell, but doggone it, this kid is going to be a bona fide top 15 pick in the next draft, because there's no way that this kid should be coming back for his senior year. 6'6", 315 pounds, absolutely body beautiful, can still probably put on another 15 pounds on that frame and still have all the athletic ability. The Canes returned 3 out of 5 starters on the offensive line. Now, transfer James Brockemeyer on his third school after leaving Alabama, after leaving TCU, would now kind of be set to anchor this Hurricanes offense from the center spot. Now, the Canes are talented at the offensive skill positions, just haven't really been proven yet. There's a difference between being talented and being proven. This unit is talented. This year, they got to be proven. C.J. Daniels, JoJo Trader, and Ray Joseph leading that 11 personnel group there for the Canes. Mark Fletcher takes over from Martinez there at the running back spot. These guys have their opportunity to make a name for themselves and will need to do so early, because when we look at this schedule, there's no soft landing spots in the first 6 to 7 weeks of the season. The opener with Notre Dame there in Hard Rock. Then a couple of games to kind of get the feet wet in Bethune-Cookman and South Florida before the 3-stretch run of the Gators at Florida State. And that Florida State game is sandwiched in a bye there. So they'll be coming off of a bye after the Florida game and then having another bye after Florida State. That could serve well for the Canes if head coach Mario Cristobal is able to work that right. So you're not coming off of a too big of a high or too big of a low after that Florida game. You'll have a week there to kind of reset and refocus for Florida State. Then the final game in that triangle is the game against Louisville. If the Canes can go 2-1 in that stretch, they set themselves up for a showcase showdown on November 1st when they head to the Metroplex to take on SMU. That game, if Miami takes care of business, could be for a punch the ticket to the ACC championship game. Something that the Hurricanes need to do under Mario Cristobal, because I think the talent is there. And when we speak of talent, look at the defensive side of the ball. Folks, there's some body beautiful athletes on this unit. Just 4 returning starters, but one of those starters is a healthy Reuben Baines Jr. Folks, this kid played injured last year and still was a problem. Fully healthy. That's not a question. That's a statement from my sources there with that program. He is physically ready to wreak havoc in the Atlantic Coast Conference this year. And with some of the other guys on that defense that needs to step up, Armando Blunt, the other defensive end that's going to be opposite of Bain, needs to kind of really make defenses pay for the double and sometimes even triple attention that Baines is going to get this year. I'm going to give you another name to watch out for on this defensive unit, and that's Bobby Pruitt. This this true freshman out of we'll call it the greater Mobile area there in the state of Alabama, could see some early playing time. And folks, I'm going to go ahead and project him as a starter, whether it's a day one starter or very early on in this season. Expect to hear this young man's name quite a bit. They're playing that will linebacker spot for the Canes. And folks, if you want to go back and look at some of the guys who have played that position for the Miami Hurricanes, look out and watch out if he can ever elevate into that stratosphere. So Canes, we know what the schedule is. We know the work that has to be done. And it starts week 1 against the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. Now, checking in at number 11, we head back to the Southeastern Conference and we head down to the Bayou, where we make a stop in beautiful Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and that's where we find the Louisiana State University Tigers. And no, we're not going to give you the Go Tigers, but we will say hello to a couple of our dear friends. Miss Peggy, know you love your team down there in the Bayou, and there's some question marks, but where there's not a question mark is at the quarterback position there for LSU. Garrett Nussmeier made a smart decision in coming back and really kind of spurning the advances of the NFL draft. Knew he had some things to work on technically as a quarterback, and I thought it was absolutely the right decision. Nuss threw for over 4,000 yards last year, 29 touchdowns. Now, as a gunslinger, I need him to cut these INTs in half. 12 interceptions last year. Like Kenny Rogers said, young man, know when to hold them and know when to fold them. I need you to play the quarterback position and understanding that taking care of the football is more important than just putting up numbers there. So, Garrett Nussmeier, you have all the physical tools to play at the next level. I just need to see you take care of the ball a little bit more. Now, the wide receiver room is still stacked with Chris Hilton Jr. Kind of being set to be the next wide receiver from LSU. And folks, LSU's got a history and a very good history of developing wide receivers there for the last decade plus. Them and Ohio State have churned out first-round picks at the wide receiver spot at a record rate. Look at them. Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, all the way through this past year with Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. And of course, we can't forget about Justin Jefferson and Jahmyr Chase. They're coming all from LSU. Now, the concerning part of this offense is the offensive line. They replaced 4 starters. Only the center, DJ Chester, is back there for LSU. Will Campbell, top 5 pick in the NFL draft. I don't see anyone on this offensive line that I'm going to project as a top 100 pick. Now, we don't have all the precincts reporting yet, but right now, that's the big question mark for me about LSU on the offensive side of the ball. The defensive side of the ball, led by one of the best linebackers in America in Will Wheat. And Will Wheat is, like I said, a bona fide Mike linebacker at the NFL level. We absolutely project as a top 100 pick, and I would not be surprised if he is not a first-round pick. This kid is just football IQ off the charts. And they bring in the transfer Patrick Payton to kind of help shore up this defensive line. And this defensive line is absolutely got to play better because this is not to the standard of LSU. Outside of the top 50 in all 4 major categories: scoring defense, rush defense, pass defense and total defense outside of the top 50 in all four of those categories. Brian Kelly, a lot of work to do for you, sir. And we'll see if getting back a healthy Harold Perkins Jr. to play that star position to where he can kind of roam the field a little bit, because you can't put Harold Perkins on the end of the line of scrimmage, because if I'm an offensive coordinator, I just slap a tight end over the top of him and I swallow him up. 6'1", 220 pounds. I need to see him playing more of that kind of rover safety mode and not just be a stationary target there for LSU. If Blake Baker can get him unlocked and he's back healthy, Perkins could be one of those top 100 picks. My last concern is the secondary. 3 new starters in the secondary. Ashton Stamps, 6 foot, 190-pound junior, only starter that is returning. Need for him to help anchor this unit there for LSU. Let's get inside the top 10, and we go to Bloomington, Indiana, and we're talking about America's team. That's right, folks. We dubbed this team in 2024 America's team for a reason. Led by America's quarterback and Curtis Rourke, had a phenomenal season last year for the Hoosiers. And they bring in Cal transfer quarterback Fernando Mendoza. Mendoza, behind a poor offensive line at Cal last year, still threw for over 3,000 yards. And he will now be coached by America's head coach in Kurt Cignetti. Coach, we don't need to Google you. We knew who you were at James Madison, and we kind of told everybody in the Big Ten what to expect once you took this job. Folks, I don't know how long America's head coach is going to be there in Indiana, because I think some big-time program is going to come knocking at his doorstep at some point. Now, this offense has some things that we kind of like. Elijah Surratt, 6'2", 200-pound senior at the wide receiving position. Folks, nobody's talking about this kid at the wide receiver spot, but you heard it here first. Elijah Surratt may find his way into a first team all Big Ten selection there based on how good he is as a wide receiver. On the defensive side of the ball, this defensive unit has playmakers at all 3 levels. Let's start up front with Kamara, 6'1", 265-pound edge rusher. Folks, this young man is good enough to play on Sundays and get drafted in the first round with that talent. At the linebacker position, Aiden Fisher, 6'1", 230-pound senior, veteran signal caller there, making sure that all of the defensive checks are made. Won't see a lot of defensive gaps there with that young man at the linebacker spot. And then finally at the safety spot, Amari Farrell will absolutely come down and body shot you as a running back. Don't get familiar with number 1, because he's going to leave a helmet stain right there in the middle of your chest. Absolutely devastating body puncher there at the safety spot. This team has playmakers at all 3 levels. And here's a little nugget, folks. First 3 games of the season against Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, and Indiana State sets them up in really good position for their next 3 games against Illinois, at Iowa, and then at Oregon. If they're able to navigate those 3 games right there, the only team that's really left on their schedule that should pose a deep threat is November 8th, when they go to Happy Valley to play Penn State. Let's get deep inside of this top 10 now, and checking it at number 9, and we head back to the Southeastern Conference, and now we check in with a team from the state of Texas. No, not the Longhorns. We're talking about the Aggies of Texas A&M. We're going to start right there with maybe the best rushing attack when you look at a dual threat quarterback, a returning running back in Moss, and folks, one of the best offensive lines in America. We project this as a top 5 offensive line unit. 4 out of 5 starters back, led by Trey Zahn, the third at the left tackle spot, one of the best tackles. Expect to hear his name called very early in the NFL draft coming up when we go to Pittsburgh later on in next April's draft. At the running back spot, I want to say a quick hello to our good friend Eden, who is joining us. Miss Eden, I told you we would be talking about your offense and not just your defense in this breakdown. Le'Veon Moss, I'm going to go ahead and put it on record right now. The best running back in the Southeastern Conference going into the season. 6 foot, 210-pound senior who will absolutely drop the shoulder and make you have second thoughts about trying to fill that A gap at the linebacker and safety position. He will absolutely body shot you. And when he's not running it, Marcel Reed from here in my backyard in Middle Tennessee, saw this young man in high school a couple of times. 6'2", 185-pound sophomore, needs to work on his game as a passer, but with Colin Klein having the entire offseason to kind of refine his game, I expect to see this young man take a step up. And then they bring in from NC State, KC Concepcion at the wide receiver spot. Kind of think of him as a smaller but faster Deebo Samuels when he was coming out of South Carolina. 5'11", 190 pounds. Not as thick as Deebo in the lower body, but more explosive there as a runner. And like I said, folks, one of the best offensive lines in all of America. Now, the defense, led by head coach Mike Elko. The day that Mike Elko has a bad defense will be the first time that I've seen one there for Mike Elko. This defensive unit is bringing back the wrecking crew. Despite the losses that they had in the NFL draft and transfer over the past couple of years, linebacker Terrion York, one of the best linebackers in the Southeastern Conference, potentially one of the best linebackers in all of America. I think that this man is a potential first-round pick. In the secondary, all returning starters, all veterans, led by the young man that I'm going to feature right here, right now, in Bryce Anderson, 6 foot, 190-pound senior. Another heavy hitter. Just look for number 1 in the secondary because he's going to one-shot you and one-drop you. Get a look at this schedule, folks. UTSA, Utah State before heading up to South Bend in a rematch and a get even spot with Notre Dame. And then look at their schedule, and I want you to see who's missing off of that schedule. Yes, they do play Texas, but there's no Alabama. There's no Georgia on this schedule. There's no Tennessee on this schedule. Outside of a trip to Baton Rouge and a trip to Austin and a home date with Florida, you go look at that schedule and you don't tell me it's a little bit yummy and delicious. Watch out for the Aggies. They were in the hunt to play for the SEC title game last year, came up a little bit short. Would not be surprised if they're right back in the hunt for it again this year. And folks, we're going to stay right there in the Southeastern Conference, and we're going to talk about the number 8 team in our preseason top 25, and that is hunkered down, the Georgia Bulldogs. I want to say a quick hello to my good friend, the Georgia Dog, and all of the great fans of this program. You want to talk about another coach that is going to always have a phenomenal defense? That is Kirby Smart. Learned under Nick Saban and has taken that back to his alma mater and absolutely been rock solid. 2 national championships under his belt, looking to go for a 3rd this year. We're going to start on the offensive side of the ball first. Gunnar Stockton, really thrown in a difficult situation, so I'm not going to grade the young man difficult there. Had to come in emergency duty when Carson Beck injured that elbow in the SEC title game. Only had a couple of weeks to get ready for the college playoff game there against a really good Notre Dame defense. So he's got all offseason, and a guy that should be under immense pressure, and that's offensive coordinator Mike Bobo. Mike Bobo has absolutely got to get this thing figured out now. The offensive line has got to be better. His son, Drew Bobo, slated to be the starting center. Ernest Green III, projected to be their best offensive lineman. Could hear his name somewhere in the second round of the upcoming NFL draft. Nate Frazier, talented running back, and of course, the wide receiver that they got to come over from USC in Zachariah Branch and Oscar Depp to kind of get this passing game under attack. Now, as far as the defense goes, one of the best defensive tackles in all of America in Christian Miller, there at the nose tackle position. He's going to look to push the pocket as a true freshman, 305 pounds. I've heard nothing but rave reviews about this young man. And one of the best linebackers in America in C.J. Allen. I'm hearing his name mentioned with some guys who are wearing gold jackets at the NFL level. If C.J. Allen is half of what they're projecting, he's by far the best inside linebacker in America if he lives up to that billing. And then at the safety spot, another heavy hitter, the next Georgia Bulldog great safety in KJ Bolden. This defense will once again be one of the best defensive units in all of America, and they're going to need to be, because if you look at that schedule, a lot of work to do, and it gets started with their two-step, going to Tennessee in week 3, the bye week, and then week 5, welcoming in the Crimson Tide of Alabama. Checking in at number 7, we head back to the Atlantic Coast Conference, and that's where we find the Clemson Tigers. Checking in, like I said, at number 7, Kate Klubnik back for his senior campaign there in Clemson. 3,600 yards passing, 36 touchdowns to just 6 INTs. Folks, a 6-to-1 ratio at the quarterback position is chef's kiss. Fantastic job there. Let's go ahead and put this on record right now. The Clemson Tigers have one of the best wide receiving units in all of America, led by Brian Wesco Jr., TJ Moore, and of course, Antonio Williams. This trio takes a backseat to nobody in college football as far as the wide receiver play. Now, they will have to replace Phil Maffa, the running back that ran for over 1,000 yards last year and 8 touchdowns, but they're going to lean on this offensive line to really kind of open up some holes. 4 out of 5 starters back. But what has got us the most excited is this defense. Folks, 2 of the best players, not at their position, 2 of the best players in America play on this defense. Peter Woods, the best interior defensive tackle in all of America. He's anchored along that defensive front by T.J. Parker. T.J. Parker will be a top 10 pick in next year's draft. Believe me now, pay me later. And of course, the transfer in Will Holt will need to kind of help offset some of that pressure off of T.J. Parker. I would put him right next to Peter Woods and really kind of free him up. The secondary is led by Avion Terrell, younger brother of Atlanta Falcons star cornerback, and A.J. Terrell. Not as fluid as his older brother, but still a talented wide receiver. Got to play with the hands a little bit less, but at 5'10", 180 pounds, if he plays with proper technique, could find himself as a second-round pick in the upcoming draft. Looking at their schedule, week 1, they welcome in LSU. Last year, the Clemson Tigers 0-3 in the regular season and playoffs against teams from the Southeastern Conference. Big game for LSU, big game for Clemson. You better believe that the Big Show will be breaking that game down in week 1 of the upcoming season. Checking in at number 6, we head back to the Big Ten, and folks, we're going to spend some time here in the Big Ten here over the next few minutes, and that is Quack Attack, the Oregon Ducks. Quick hello to my good friend Megan. Love her Ducks, and of course her precious little duck there, and her beautiful daughter. Want to say a quick hello to you, wonderful ladies. Dante Moore. This will be the first time head coach Dan Lanning does not have a veteran signal caller there. This team is coming off an undefeated regular season, their first Big Ten championship game. But the only thing that people are talking about in Eugene right now is that country butt whooping that they took in the Rose Bowl by the hands of Ohio State 41-21. And folks, the game wasn't even that close. Dan Lanning is not looking to rebuild. He's got Uncle Phil's credit card. He's looking to reload, and he's going to do that by some key additions that this team has made. Now, they will not have Evan Stewart this season as he suffered a significant knee injury, will be out for the year. Who they will be turning to is a fantastic running back and maybe the next great running back out of the University of Oregon, and that's Malachi Hughes, 5'11", 210-pound junior. He's going to be taking the reins over from Jordan James, who ran for almost 1,300 yards and 15 touchdowns. I expect this young man to hit the gas and don't find the brakes. Go find the end zone, baby. Now, a guy that could emerge on this offense is tight end Keon Sadiq. 6'3", 240-pound junior there, could be in line for some big-time targets there for the Ducks. Now, Ducks are replacing 4 out of 5 starters on the offensive line there, so we'll need to kind of get things in gear early. And they got a soft landing spot in the first month of the season. Montana State, Oklahoma State, at Northwestern, and then the Civil War against Oregon State before the big showdown at Penn State, and then welcome in America's team, the Indiana Hoosiers, there in late September and then early October. The defense, led by another Uangalele, and that is Mateo. This young man will be a future first-round pick in the NFL draft. 6'5", 275-pound hellraiser at the defensive end spot. I love everything about this kid's game, and he will absolutely put some heat on your quarterback there. Bryce Brocher also will provide some pass rush there. 6'2", 230-pound senior coming off of the opposite edge there for the defense there of Oregon. And Tosh Lepo has some things to work with now. He is breaking in an entire new secondary, but like I said, a soft landing spot, at least for the first 3, if not 4 games of the season, really gives Oregon a chance to kind of work through some things and get ready for the stretch run of the Big Ten. Checking in at number 5, and now we start to get down to business here. Let's go ahead and crank me up some music here. Coming in at number 5 is the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Head coach Marcus Freeman is not messing around, folks. Brian Kelly said that you couldn't compete for a national championship at Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman said, step back and hold your own beer because you got troubles of your own down in the bayou. Marcus Freeman, 33-10 in 3 years as the head coach of the Fighting Irish, coming off of a national championship game appearance there where he went toe-to-toe with a really good Ohio State Buckeye team. Now, this team will be breaking in a new starting quarterback in C.J. Carr. Yes, grandson of former Michigan head coach Lloyd Carr. We'll see if this young man can step in and be a much better passer than what they had in Riley Leonard, because Leonard was more of a running threat. They do bring back one of the best running back rooms in America. We have him as our number 2 running back room and led by the number 1 running back in America in Jeremiah Love. Folks, best running back in the game, and there's really no doubt about it. Also, have a really good standout wide receiver in Jaden Greathouse and Jordan Faison at the wide receiver spot. They will absolutely have to get things going. Now, we just got some breaking news a day or so ago, as projected starting right guard Charles Jagashaw broke his arm on an ATV, will absolutely miss at least the first month of the season, could miss even more time there with that broken arm. We'll see how that affects them going into that week 1 showdown with the Canes down in Hard Rock. But starting at that left tackle spot is Anthony Knapp. Took over for Jagashaw when he got hurt last year with the pectoral injury in training camp. Anthony Knapp is fastly becoming a name that we're having to keep an eye on in another year as a future first-round pick. This defense under Chris Ash, who takes over as the new defensive coordinator, has got a lot of things to work with, and he will be helped by Marcus Freeman, as that's Freeman's side of the ball. So if there's a name that I'm going to give you as far as being a true leader on that defense, I got to go with the corner in Leonard Moore. Expect him to draw every team's number one wide receiver in this upcoming season, and he would need to play like a guy who can be a top 100 pick. All right, folks, you've been waiting on it. Let's get to the top 4 here for the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network's top 25. And checking in at number 4, we go to Columbus, Ohio, where we will find the number 4 team in the nation in our preseason top 25, and that is the Buckeyes of Ohio State. The Buckeyes are in line for a transition year, as a lot of familiar names over the past few years are no longer with this team, both at the coaching position as well as the players on the team. Gone off of that offensive line are 3 starters in Simmons, Donovan Jackson, of course, and the center in Seth McLaughlin. So just 2 returning starters there for the Buckeyes. But what they have is one of the best players at the wide receiving position, Jeremiah Smith. And this wide receiving core will once again be one of the best in the nation. Carnell Tate finally gets his chance to step into the starting role as he takes over for Emeka Ibuka. And of course, Brandon Ennis will also be in the rotation as the number 3 wide receiver. But the guy that really needs to step up and help whoever is the starting quarterback, because that position has not been locked down yet by Julian Sam. Going to have to earn it in camp. And that is the Purdue transfer in Max Clare, 6'4", 236-pound senior. A mismatch there in the middle of the field. If Ohio State can get this young man going, that's going to free up those talented wide receivers even more so. And of course, the running back in C.J. Daniels, coming over from West Virginia, looks to put up some big numbers there as the RB1 there in Columbus. And folks, if you're RB1 in Columbus, you should be putting up video game numbers. Go back and look at some of the guys who've been RB1. Edward Nathan George being one of them. Zeke Elliott being another one. Chris Beanie Wells being another. This team knows how to produce the running backs there. And if they give a soft landing spot to whoever the starting quarterback is, expect this Ohio State offense to be once again one of the best in the country. As far as the defense goes, a lot of familiar names in JT and Sawyer. Tyleek Williams no longer on this roster, but folks, Ohio State is not devoid of talent. North Carolina transfer Bo Atkinson comes over to play the defensive end spot, but this defensive unit is led by, and when I give you a nickname, you better believe that this guy can absolutely ball out. Smooth Sonny Styles is going to be the leader of this defense there at the front 7 spot. He's also backed up by, folks, the best safety I've seen in college football since Ed Reed at the University of Miami 2 decades ago. Caleb Downs is that one, and he wears number 2, but he is that one. Talented safety, gonna see some time at the punt returning game once again. Now, I mentioned the transition was not just limited to the young players on the field, but 2 new coordinators. Brian Hartline, take 2 as the offensive coordinator for the Buckeyes. And hello to my good friends Amber and Carol and all of our Buckeye fans. Brian Hartline was an absolute failure as an offensive coordinator the first time around. That's why you went and got Chip Kelly, and it paid off with a national championship. So no problem there. But Ron Day 2 years ago had to take back over the play calling duties because Brian Hartline was over his skis. Now, defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles, exits Columbus, heads to Happy Valley. He's now the defensive coordinator there for the Penn State Nittany Lions. They tapped Matt Patricia as the defensive coordinator. Interesting note, I'll talk about that, is Matt Patricia did not join Bill Belichick and that former New England staff there in Chapel Hill. Things to make you go, we have thoughts about that. Now, Buckeyes, 3 returning starters there on the defensive side of the ball. We already talked about Smooth, Sonny Styles, Caleb Downs, and of course, D.I. at the cornerback spot. If he can stop playing with his hands and stop picking up some of those pass interference calls, this young man could absolutely be a first-round pick in the NFL draft. The Buckeyes are still full of talent and will absolutely be in the hunt, but got to get off because that first game to open the schedule, University of Texas. We'll be talking about them in just a moment. Now, let's get inside of the top 3. Let's head back to the Southeastern Conference, where we find a trip down to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and the Alabama Crimson Tide. Folks, 9-3 in the regular season because we're not even thinking about the bowl game. This team is stacked, packed, and ready to put you on the rack. Offensive line, one of the best offensive lines in college football. We project this team to have a top 10 offensive unit led by Caden Proctor, one of the best left tackles in the game. Also, Parker Brantford, one of the best centers in the game. And of course, Jaden Robertson, one of the best guards in the game this season. Quarterback will be Ty Simpson. That's not a comment. That's a statement of fact. 6'2", 210-pound junior will be QB1. And he will be led by offensive coordinator back with the Crimson Tide in Ryan Grubbs. We know he was going to join this staff last year, but had the opportunity to stay in the state of Washington with his family, took the Seattle Seahawks job as the offensive coordinator. Did not work out. So now he's back with Kalen DeBoer and this staff. This head coach knows how to develop talent, and he's got plenty of talent to work with. Folks, this wide receiver unit, 1, 2, 3, the best in America. Ron Williams, Jeremy Bernard, and from the University of Miami, Isaiah Horton. Folks, compliment. You got your X, you got your Y, and you got your slot. You have everything that you could want in a trio from a body type and a talent standpoint. It's going to be a defensive nightmare trying to slow down this wide receiver unit. And now with a quarterback that's going to play on time and on rhythm, unlike Jalen Milroe last year, I expect big things from this offense coming up. Jam Miller needs to prove a little bit of something there and no longer that log jam in front of him at the running back spot. Expect him to up his carries now that Milroe's not there. 668 yards rushing last year. I expect Jam Miller to be more of that 900 or even more out of the running back spot. As far as the defensive line goes, one of the best defensive lines in America. LT Overton, Tim Keenan III anchored this Alabama defensive front led by defensive coordinator Kane Womack. Was the former head coach of the University of South Alabama. Got a chance to see him coach up quite a bit when I was down watching the Senior Bowl there for the past few years. Year 2 of his scheme, that 4-2-5, expect this defense to absolutely take a big step forward. They have a healthy Deontay Lawson back to anchor this defensive front seven as far as the signal calls. Could have gone into the NFL draft, said he had something to prove. If he proves what I think he can prove, you're talking about a late first-round pick there. And, folks, the best secondary in America. Jackson, Brown, and then the 2 best safety duo in America in Keon Sabb and Bray Hubbard. The Alabama Crimson Tide, there's a storm rising, and it looks like a crimson tide. Expect Alabama to be in our preseason top 3 and a potential co-favorite to make their trip back to the SEC championship game this upcoming season. Checking in at number 2, folks, one of the most talented rosters in all of America, and that's the Penn State Nittany Lions. Love their coordinators. And Andy Kownecki, saw him quite a bit in Kansas. And, of course, Jim Knowles. We already talked about him coming over from Ohio State. If Knowles can do for this defense what he did for Ohio State, the Penn State Nittany Lions will be in the hunt to do some very special things in this upcoming season. Drew Allar had a very solid season last year. 3,300 yards passing, 24 touchdowns, 8 INTs. Now, they're missing Tyler Warren, but what they do have is the best running back room in America. Big Nick Singleton, Katron Allen are going to look to pound you into the ground, and they're going to do that behind a veteran offensive line. 4 out of 5 starters back on the offensive line. Tap the transfer portal and tap the transfer portal to get transfer Taylor Penne at the wide receiver spot. 6 foot, 185-pound senior there from Syracuse. Expect him to be the vertical threat that this team has been missing for the past few years, not since Dobson was there for Penn State. As far as the defense goes, Jim Knowles has got a beautiful unit, and it's beautiful at every level. Back for his senior year, did not go into the NFL draft. Both Dennis Sutton at the defensive end spot and Zane Durant, two of the best defensive line players in America. At the linebacker spot, two of the best linebackers in Dominic DeLuca and Tony Rojas. And at the safety spot, at the corner spot, A.J. Harris. This unit is absolutely stacked. If Jim Knowles can get them up and going, especially with that schedule to start the first couple of weeks, Nevada, FIU, and Villanova, Knowles has got 3 games to really kind of hone this defense and get it ready. If the offense can just keep the wheels on the track, Penn State will right back in the thick of things there in the Big Ten. And coming in at number 1, it's the Texas Longhorns. And folks, it has nothing to do with the name of the quarterback, which I will not mention here in this breakdown. The reason why we have the Longhorns as the number 1 team going into the preseason, it starts with their running back room. Folks, this is one of the best running back rooms in America. We have them projected as the number 3 unit, led by a healthy C.J. Baxter and, of course, Hugh Wisner. Really good duo there at the running back spot. Expect Ryan Wingo at the wide receiver spot to be the next great Texas wide receiver in a history of developing great wide receivers. Now, the offensive line does replace 4 starters, including Banksy, who is down with the New Orleans Saints right now, but I expect this offensive line to still be once again because Kyle Flood knows how to develop offensive linemen. Go back and look at his tenure there under Nick Saban as the offensive line coach. Put a lot of guys in the NFL at the offensive line spot. He came with Steve Sarkisian to Texas and has continued to do so. So despite only having 1 returning starter, I still expect this offensive line from Texas to be one of the best in the nation. But what I'm most excited about is what Pete Kowalski, the defensive coordinator, has to work with this season. The best edge rusher in America in Colin Simmons, 6'3", 235 pounds. Folks, Micah Parsons, that's all you need to know. At the linebacker spot, the best linebacker in all of America in Anthony Hill Jr. Folks, lights out there at the linebacker spot. And, of course, at the cornerback spot, led by Malik Muhammad, one of the best corners in America, replacing Jahdae Barron, who was just a early round pick in the NFL draft. Expect Malik Muhammad to join him in the NFL next year as a top 50 pick in the NFL draft. Like I said, will not be mentioning the quarterback name because we know who the name is and why everybody's going to be talking about him. I'm talking about a unit that is expected to be one of the best defenses once again in America. And you're talking about a defensive unit that was top 15 in all 4 major categories, including top 10 in scoring defense, pass defense, and total defense. I expect that this unit will not have any drop off, and Colin Simmons could be putting his name in line to be a top overall pick in 2 years when he's eligible for the NFL draft. So he can't come out in the 26 draft, but I'm talking about the 27 draft, which is loaded with wide receivers. You're talking about Ron Williams from Alabama, Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State, and then, of course, Cam Coleman, wide receiver at Auburn University. Folks, that is our top 25 preseason show. Hope you enjoyed it. Expect to have a lot of great feedback. And of course, if you aren't already, give us a follow on social media at Crunch Time VIP on Twitter. Like and subscribe to us on YouTube. And of course, check out the website at crunchtimesportsadvantagenetwork.com. We have some great packages for the NFL and for college football. Hope you join us as we'll have a reaction show coming up on Twitter following this podcast.